This was so bad. It was so bad. I threw it in the bin. So why would you watch the video if it's going to end up in the bin? Well, I did do a second attempt. I've got to say that didn't turn out like my original vision, but at least it got finished. It's different, I'll say that about it. But what am I doing? Well, this is the original Mecha contest. My favourite contest out there. It's run by amazingly nice people, and the only stipulation, bar one that tripped me up, and more about that in a minute, the only stipulation is it's got to be something original and mech. That's two. Originality, you don't see that much. I recently went around IPMS and all of the sci-fi offerings were basically Star Wars, Jerry Anderson, Battlestar Galactica, a little bit of Gundam and Warhammer creeping in. There was no real originality of new designs coming out. And I feel that there's so much original stuff out there on Instagram, you're just not seeing it in mainstream modelling. And I want to show that you can make your own stuff out of junk, that you can take things that are sat on the side like tripods, old broken electric toothbrushes, and you can make something amazing. And it's a great contest. It runs from February to October. You can do anything you like, really. Anything you like, whether it's a humanoid, sort of stand-up chunky mech, whether it's a more aesthetic android style mech, a four-legged animal one, and I chose the latter. I wanted to do a griffin. Now, a griffin's a mythological beast, it's fantastical. If you don't know what it is, it's got the front legs, head and wings of an eagle, and the back legs and tail of a lion. So it's a great contest. I had a great idea for a design, in my view. And it didn't work. Well, why not? Well, I don't actually scratch build things. I don't have piles of kit bashable stuff sitting around. I have junk. I had to buy junk for this. Some of the tripods I bought especially for this. I don't have kits that I keep loads of bits from because I don't actually build that many kits. And when I do, they're for relaxation and I want to build them as the kit. I 3D print everything. And I have a huge amount of skills in the 3D printing arena. That sounded very boastful. But I can design and 3D print. This has a 15% 3D print limit in the contest. And I'd love it if they changed that, but that's what the contest is this year. And I hit a wall with that. It's not working. It's really not working. It's not working. It's just not working. So these with the filler on, I mean, I could sand them to shape. They're, you know, they're okay. They're a bit heavy. It's going to take a lot of sanding, but that's just two. I can't get the fluid shapes. I've been thinking and thinking about it. And it comes back to this. This is my spine. This was the smallest tripod I could find. I mean, I can use this in something else, but it's just too big. Everything's too big. It's not going to be a model. It's going to be a statue. And it's not working for me. These are tacked on, but I need to find some way to hold them in place so the joints will work because the rubber is like the, it's how the joints are working. They're stiff on the rubber. And I don't know what to use. And I don't have the tools in my skill set to work in large volume like this. You know, doing it in epoxy putties and all the things that are easy to sculpt is hideously expensive. I mean, this was like a whole pot of filler between the two of them practically. I don't know how to do it. So what I'm going to do, you've got a choice at this point, haven't you, in any project. You either keep going and slog on and say, okay, but I want the toothbrush that I had with the battery, I want that so I can light it, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and you can carry on with all the ideas, and you know in your head it's not working. Or you can leave it on the side, where this has been for 2 months. I mean, I put Port de Nautique on the side for 2.5 years before I finally admitted it wasn't working and it went in the skip. So I have form on this, But I know deep down, I'm just gonna start again. 30-minute mission kits. There must be something in here I can use. Time to get the tools out and build a kit. This is the Barbaturus. I don't actually have an eagle or a lion kit floating around, but I do have some bits I can use in them. And I'm starting with this kit, Barbaturus. It's a horse. Or perhaps it's a unicorn. New model, new inspiration. So I turned to this book cover from a book I read when I was a child, The Crystal Griffin by Andre Norton. One of the reasons I like griffins, I think. So this is my, right, it's going to be this size. It's going to have wings. Quite weird this, it kind of, if I can get it, it comes apart. So I can actually take that off and then it gets bigger so you can put the little men in. It's just weird. So I can make it a bit longer, which will give me space for the wings. And then if I do that, I can actually make the legs just a little bit longer and the head a little bit longer, which will just make it look a better size. We're now on the kit bash phase. And to be honest, that's a lot of cutting up of styrene, drilling holes. I tacked 4 pieces together with super glue to get them identical, and sanding and filing and cutting and sanding. So I'm really pleased how it's going. One day down, I've assembled it, I've cut bits off like hooves, and I made another little bit which I glued on last night. Interesting fact, there was 24 hours almost exactly of footage for this, double cameraed in most cases, so that's 48 hours of footage. And most of it is actually me cutting out styrene bits, or a lot of the section I threw in the bin. So I'm not going to go through this in great detail, don't worry. Except to say, I still kept losing my way. I mean, this looks great on video, those sparks, but this was just too big and chunky. And I ended up coming down the next morning, having done all this work, and throwing it in the bin and starting again with my feet. And I think this is why I prefer doing 3D prints. I don't actually have to print it. I can look at it in the design program. And if I want to make it smaller, I can just scale it a little bit. I don't have to go and find a new part and remake the whole thing. I can literally go S and drag my mouse a little and it's smaller. I'm really, really struggling with scratch building, as you can tell. So I went back to my computer where I feel more at home and designed the wings. I designed them in a CAD program rather than a 3D print program and cut out the wings on this Brother Scan and Cut. It's basically a craft cutter. You might have heard of Cricut. It's one of the more popular ones, but I was given this one by my mum and it will cut through 0.25mm styrene very easily. Now the design process wasn't any quicker than if I'd been doing it myself by hand. But the ability to get 2 identical wings, identical, with no extra cutting really, just an extra 5 minutes, well, that was priceless. A few more bought parts, and at this point everything was articulating still very nicely, i.e. the joints worked. Pretty soon though, I had to decide whether I was going to sacrifice movability for the ability for it to stand up without falling over. And as a totally random aside, I used very thin super glue to strengthen out this. It's actually a USB broken lead, and I took the woven covering off it and put it on the legs to make a nice scaly texture. But it was a bit soft. Super glue, very thin super glue, makes it all nice and tough, with the bonus you can sand it if you need to later. So lion's hands became eagle's claws, and pretty soon I'm going to cut to the chase. I had a rough griffin, but it is rough, and there are gaps, and there are bits that need bulking out and filling. And for that, I used epoxy putty. This is black milliput, but actually for the bulk of it I used epoxy sculpt. I have a really, really old set of containers I've never used, but they still set fine. I must admit though, this is probably the first time I've ever used epoxy putty in my life, and I've been modelling for over 20 years. So it was a bit of a learning curve. Water stops things from sticking and helps you smooth it out. There's a time to it because it sets itself within a certain amount of time. It gets firmer as it sets, but it also stops sticking as much. And if you want to do thin, pointy bits for feathers or spikes, best done right towards the end of the curing time where you can roll it out. I used baby powder like flour and I rolled it out like biscuits and just cut it into shape. Time to take stock. I wish I'd made the head a little bit taller. I used the existing location and it's just too small to balance out the wings. And it's just a bit plain. It's lacking in something. More detail needed, I think. But it's not very mech-like anymore. As I'm bearing my modelling soul in this video, I think I took it too far. I added detail after detail, layer of feathers after ruffs, after hair, after fur. I just wanted to cover up my bad base build where I could see all the flaws, but organic stuff can still look a little too rough. I'm not sure I really got where I wanted to go with this. And eventually there was so much stuff on it, I just couldn't handle it anymore without knocking something off. And I still added more until finally I just had to give up and say it was done. But it's not painted. And by this point I had truly had enough of it. Bear in mind this is now the start of October and I started this in March and it's been on and off since then. So I sprayed it with some black Mr. Surfacer, it's a lacquer primer. Then I went over the edges with pink Mr. Surfacer, it's another primer. Fettled out any areas, primer always shows up rough stuff, and then gave it its final quick top coats. Fluorescent Mr. Colour and red Mr. Colour. Now the red Mr. Colour went over a lot of it and I did it from above to act as kind of a shading. I knew I wanted this red and pink look, but realistically I'd run out of steam. So I hand painted an awful lot of the extra details because I didn't want to mask. I just didn't want to go there. And there were so many bits, I was going to knock stuff off if I tried masking. So I gave up and submitted it. It needed 4 whip photos and then 5 or 6 final photos. So I took those, I put it on an illuminated LED turntable and you could put a minute video in. I didn't exactly blow the boat out by this point. I just wanted it finished. And that was my original Mecha contest entry. You can see how it did. There's a live stream, which I'll put a link down below, where they put the winners up. Wasn't a winner, not a surprise. I hated it. By the end, I wouldn't expect anybody else to like it either. But there were some amazing winners there, and it is worth checking out the live stream to see exactly what they did. These people are so gifted. I know what I want to do next time. I actually had the vision from the start, and I got lost. I got lost in the process and lost in my lack of skills. I'm going to 3D print the next one, and it may not be in the original Mecha contest unless they change the rules on 3D printing. It would kind of defeat the point of the contest. I'm not sure they want it to be 3D printed, so maybe it isn't the right contest for me, but it's such a great contest. I do encourage you to check out the live stream and look at the winners, and to take part yourself if you have any desire to scratch build your own mech. It will be worth it. It's an absolutely just awesome project you've been involved with. I just got lost. Anyway, subscribe, hit the bell button, you know the things, and I'll see you next time with hopefully something that went a little bit better.